What is up guys, Matt Binkowski here, welcome to yet another episode of Game Jitsu. Today I want to talk about something a little bit different. Up to this point we've been talking about the production process and what and why is important to take care of at each stage. But the missing part is who's responsible for doing those things. And many times it's a source of trouble when either no one is taking care of certain things or people get in each other's way. So today I want to talk about 3 most important roles in game development company. The first role I want to cover is business and management. And I know I'm simplifying things a little bit, but bear with me. The reason I want to start with this one is because it seems to be the most neglected one, especially in smaller companies. Everybody seems to want the creative job. People start game dev companies being programmers, artists, designers, and they seem to forget that running a video game company is running a business like any other business. So, as the person running the business, as the CEO or studio head, you make sure the business is running. That means you get funding, and that could mean that you pay people from your own pocket or you find investors. That means you hire people, that you rent the office, that you buy the hardware. That means you pay the bills. As the person in business and management role, you also think about the long-term strategy for your business. It's your job to figure out how are you going to win in this immensely competitive market. You decide what kind of products and services you're going to make and for what audience. And finally, you define business objectives for the current project and make sure they are well communicated and understood. You also worry how are you going to sell your games and what the pricing should be. That also means you have to take care of marketing and community and PR and distribution. And not to mention, you need to take care of your brand. And that doesn't mean that you do it all with your own hands, but it's your job to make sure that these topics are taken care of. So for example, you might decide that you want to work with a publisher to take care of all those things, but it's your job to make that decision, and then it's your job to find a publisher and maintain that and any other partnership. By the way, there's also another aspect of being a CEO or being the management that we need to cover. And that is that everyone looks up to you because you're the boss. And that means that you lead by example, but the tricky part is that it doesn't matter if you give good example or bad example, people will follow. So you establish the culture of your company. And culture is not pool tables, free snacks, arcade machines, and beautiful words printed on the walls. Culture is what you do and how you do it every day. Who gets promoted? How do you give feedback? What happens when someone makes a mistake? What happens when someone speaks up? What happens when someone is an asshole? What happens when you win and what happens when you fail? Culture is what people do every day and the way they do it. And when things go wrong, we have this really nice saying in Poland that the fish starts rotting at the head.
I am the king. I will punish you.
Any man who must say, I am the king, is no true king.
All of this is what you take care of in business and management role. You make decisions in that space and you take the responsibility. Then we have the sexy creative role, game director or creative director or whatever. This is the role of the person who holds the vision for the game. Your job is to have a vision that meets business objectives and delivers value for a specific audience. Your job is also to collaborate with experts in various fields and make sure that that vision is well communicated and understood by everybody in the team. Your job is to provide direction and answer any questions that the team might have. Eventually, you take the final creative calls and you take responsibility for the quality of the game and make sure that it's one beautifully coherent experience. Now, as great as it may sound, this is not a simple job. The responsibility is huge, and the most common problem is that the person in the creative role, for whatever reason, is unable to deliver a clear direction. And that, in turn, creates a lot of waste and frustration in the team because they have to rework a lot of stuff. And obviously it blows up your budget and timelines. Speaking of which, finally we have the production role, the producer. This is the captain of the ship, or at least should be.
Look at me, sure. Look at me, sure. I'm the captain now.
Your job is to understand the business objectives and understand the product that you're supposed to build and make sure it gets built on time and on budget. So you make sure you have all the team members, all the tools, and all the pipelines to make it happen. You assess the risks, whether they are creative, technological, or logistic, and based on those risks, you assess priorities, you draw plans, and then you execute them. Of course, you don't operate in vacuum. You're in constant communication with both the business side and creative side of things, as well as the team. And ultimately, you make the production calls, and you take the responsibility for delivering the game. That's the setup. Obviously, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. The team will constantly face trouble, and so decisions will have to be made. Decisions that affect everything and everybody. In order to solve incoming problems, communication is key. And that's why it's so important to have business objectives defined and to have clear vision for your game, so that you can make decisions based on them rather than on personal biases and opinions. For example, creative side wants to add an additional feature, and that means extra development time and budget. Does it help with our business objectives? Will it actually add value for our audience? Can we afford to do it? How will the final schedule be affected? Do we cut something else instead? Can we extend time and budget? On the other hand, production might find something that is important from a creative standpoint, but they cannot deliver it. It can be too expensive or too difficult or whatever. Can we cut this feature? Maybe we can achieve the same results but with different means. There's gotta be a lot of back and forth communication between production, the team, and creative, the vision holders. And ultimately, you wanna have a clear understanding of the decision being made, as well as why that decision was made and possible consequences. There has to be a handshake between the sides every single time. And in case that handshake is impossible, which happens, it's time to escalate the problem upstairs to the management. Let's say the creatives are stuck on a position that they say we need to deliver this in order to provide the value that we agreed upon. But then the production says, but we don't have enough time and money. And now the management needs to take a look at the long-term strategy, at the current objectives, at the current state of the team and the project, and they have to make a call and take the responsibility. The important part is that everyone needs to understand what decision is being made, why that decision was being made, and then make sure that it's well communicated down to the rest of the team. Which is actually one of the most difficult things to handle. In my experience, I noticed that about 70-80% is communication problems, and then only the remaining 20-30% is like technical design, content building problems. Now, I've been talking about roles, not people. And that's because it's possible that a single person plays more than one role. But if that's the case, things get a little bit tricky. Here's why. Number one, it's actually absolutely crucial that you understand that each role is different and it has different responsibilities and that you can actually handle it all. If your team and projects are small, then probably, maybe you can actually handle it. But as things scale up, most likely it's like you're taking care of some things and then there's this big ugly pile of things left completely unattended. Number two, it becomes a bit schizophrenic when you're negotiating with yourself. And you might be thinking you're good at it, but reality most of the time is very, very different. In general, people are pretty horrible at negotiating. And then on top of that, if you think that you can stay objective, you're most likely fooling yourself and you're gonna be skewed one way or the other. So ideally, you wanna have different people in different roles. And still, the biggest problem is going to be ability to talk to each other and respecting the boundaries. You really want to avoid situations where business is making creative decisions or creatives are carelessly expanding budget and timeline. So, to sum it all up, understand the key roles, understand the differences between them, respect boundaries. Remember, you need to put a lot of effort into communication to make sure things run smoothly. This is something you have to pay attention to every single day. And that's it for today. See you guys next time.